Hey guys, what's up? Kalamazi here, and this is going to be a Temple of Sethraliss dungeon guide. I really enjoyed both making this guide and running the dungeon. I feel that all four bosses are very unique and interesting, with each one having a very different set of abilities and ways to approach the fight. It's going to be very interesting to see how the tuning of them plays out, as I feel the third boss is going to be a pretty big challenge, maybe something like the Mana Devourer is in Upper Karazhan, and the higher you go on Heroic Mythic Plus, the harder it gets to beat him. The trash is not too threatening. While the dungeon is relatively long, the environment changing multiple times throughout the dungeon keeps it feeling fresh and captivating. I feel it's going to be a very interesting and potentially challenging dungeon to run both on Tyrannical and Fortified every other week, especially at the start of Battle for Azeroth. Azeroth and Aspects is the first boss encounter that we see, and they have a powerful ability called Lightning Shield that they pass between each other during the fight. It increases their overall energy while active, and they each have their own powerful abilities that they use at 50 and 100 energy respectively. Jolt is an ability that we'll see cast every so often throughout the fight, and while it's not super threatening, it can be interrupted, so interruption could easily be used. Cyclone Strike follows quickly after, and you basically move and avoid the tornadoes it throws out towards party members to avoid the incoming damage. Conduction is also seen here, and it's an ability that targets one party member and places a circle around them. It deals moderate nature damage. After 5 seconds, if anyone is within the circle upon expiration, they will take nature damage as well. Static Shock is the ability that Aspects uses once he reaches 100 energy. It's a party-wide AoE that deals 20% of your maximum health to each party member once the ring actually reaches them here.
Can stand against our empire. What will become?
Now sadly we did kill the bosses before Azeroth was able to use both of his energy-based abilities, but we can see Pearl of Thunder ability used here. It places a large circle on the ground, and upon cast completion deals a massive amount of nature damage to all enemies within 15 yards of the circle. The last ability that's not seen here is called Arc Dash to Azeroth's cast at 100 energy, in which he teleports to a location and deals a large amount of damage to anybody along the way that's caught within his path. Merika is the second boss we encounter. It has a fairly short list of abilities, but also has some smaller snake adds present that add to the encounter. Noxious Breath is a 2.5 second cast that causes the boss to turn and spray green bile over a large portion of the room, and it leaves behind a toxic pool, or toxic pools. Standing in and deal a bit of ticking nature damage every second, so it's pretty simple just to avoid the pools on the ground. At roughly 70% and 40% for us, the boss dives into the ground, and the eggs that begin to hatch at previously specified quadrants of the room hatch. Being close to the adds applies a cytotoxin poison debuff to the tank that can be removed. Simply burn them down or AoE and wait for phase 1 to begin again, but I do want to note that the boss is moving around below the floor, and any players hit by her will take a moderate amount of nature damage and be knocked back pretty far. Hatotoxin is a debuff that's placed in the tank. It deals a moderate bit of damage over 8 seconds, so healers have to be aware of its presence overall. We can see here again right at 40% that she does burrow under the ground again beginning phase 2 once again, and it's quite easy to burn these adds down. Just continue watching out for her as she does burrow, and you can see she gets pretty close to the pack here. But once again, getting hit by it is not lethal, however it is a good bit of damage and does knock you back a good ways. Once her second burrow phase is complete, she returns and can simply be DPS down while keeping in mind the previous mechanics in phase 1. Blinding Sand is now also present, however, and it's very similar to the constructs in Somewhat Plateau if you can remember that far back. Simply turn your back to her once the cast is almost complete, where you will take a bit of damage and be disoriented for 5 seconds. The final ability that's not seen here but is present on Heroic and Mythic is called a Knot of Snakes. Basically, a knot of snakes appears on a random group member and will slowly kill them and prevent all action until killed by the group. It's very similar to the Fly Swarm on the last boss of Blackroot Hole, but this is a permanent disorient until killed. It's especially important to watch for it, as being on a healer for a long period of time can easily spell trouble. Now, I'm probably totally butchering the name here, but the third boss we see is named Galvez, and this is the fight I think can easily be the most challenging in the dungeon, on higher tyrannical keys depending on how he's actually tuned. He has a pretty small list of abilities, but their damage will ramp up very quickly on higher difficulties, and demands very good play and mechanics overall. The fight revolves around his energy bar that can be seen next to his nameplate. Galvanize is the first ability we see, and it increases his energy levels. If and when his energy reaches 100 energy, he casts Consume Charge, which resets all of his energy but deals a bit of party-wide AoE damage. The important thing to note here is that it also grants him a stack of Capacitance. Capacitance states that with each release of energy, meaning each time he reaches 100 energy, his overall damage is increased by 30%, and it stacks. While this might not seem too threatening, there's also another mechanic or two that helps him gain energy even further. Electroshock and its mechanics are referring to the pillar we see here and the player standing between it. Soaking the beam prevents him from gaining further energy, but the player also takes damage themselves. This in conjunction with his other damaging abilities and his induction ability he uses every so often, dealing a small bit of damage to players can really ramp up extremely fast, especially when he's buffed with 30 or 60 or 90% damage increase. One mechanic we do not see here is the Chaotic Spark, and it simply pursues another player for 30 seconds. If it comes in contact with that player, it short circuits and they are stunned for 15 seconds to take a bit of nature damage. If it comes in contact with the boss, it grants him 15 energy, so make sure you have a plan for them. Now I did want to leave the actual trash here in the guide as well, as this is probably the part of the dungeon that, well depending on the tuning, could easily be the hardest. Finding the gaps to walk through here is pretty easy, even though I fail out of here. And passing over the red portion of the bridge here removes the polarized field slow debuff that is placed upon party members as well. Now that appears to be pretty simple, but the hardest part of the remaining trash is just ahead, and if you enjoyed the torch event in Blackrock Depths, then you're probably going to enjoy this. But if you didn't like it, like the vast majority of the player base, then you're probably not going to really enjoy it very much. Now if you notice there that when we killed that mob, the skull with the white outline became active behind us. On both sides of the room there's a large glass eyeball that you can pick up. The goal is to bring it to the skull and place it in the one empty spot, as the other eye is already in the skull. Doing so opens the passage to the final boss behind us, but it's simply not that easy. The surrounding trash is on a very short respawn timer, and if they get close to you will steal the orb and run as far as they can with it. Getting caught in the wrong spot here can lead to a disaster, as the orb can quickly be moved pretty far. It does remind me a good bit of the old Blackrock Depths torch event near the end, as it also brought with it the same anxiety and frustration. It was a bit bugged here, and it took us a bit longer than it should have to place the orb in the eyes, but I'm very eager to see how this looks in a fortified setting. Now it did take us about 5 minutes more to complete this gauntlet, and I left it intact here to show the event how it actually flows. If you're interested in seeing the final boss, you can skip ahead a few minutes or stay for the remaining gauntlet duration if you'd like. The final boss, if you want to call it that, is the Avatar of Sethraliss, and it is not your normal boss encounter. There are these 4 channeling mobs here that must be killed to start the encounter, and they're also present throughout the fight. Once the encounter begins, you and your group need to protect the Avatar of Sethraliss, as your healer heals them back to full health. Ads will spawn periodically around the room and need to be interrupted and killed quickly. Each has a different set of abilities which we will go over. The Heart Guardians have a Heart Strike ability that has a smallish radius around them. Melee needs to be aware of it and move away near its completion. If you're standing directly behind the mob, however, the Heart Strike ability will not hit you, and once they're killed, they drop an energy fragment at their location. Picking it up helps further heal the Avatar to full, so be sure to watch out for these and pick them up whenever you can. The Avatar of Sethraliss will also periodically pulse with damage to your group via the pulse ability, so be prepared for a bit more group healing when this is actually happening. The Hoodoo Hexers have 2 different abilities that need to be interrupted. The Taint ability is channeled into the Avatar and reduces healing taken by 20%. Having multiple Hexers active does stack the healing reduction, so be sure to get them down quickly. They also cast Lightning Bolt at the Avatar, which should be interrupted as well. It's a 3-second cast, so it's pretty easy to see and interrupt. The final mob that is not seen here but is present on Heroic and Mythic difficulties is called the Plague Doctor. They have a Rain of Toads ability that calls down a few toads and need to be intercepted by anyone but your healer. They give you the Plague debuff when intercepted, which reduces healing done by 50% and gives a small ticking dot. It's worth noting, however, that this effect does stack, so having some sort of pre-assigned soaking order will be important. They also have a Snake Charm ability that I would imagine is interruptible and is also a magic debuff. It transforms the target into a snake for 1 minute and they're unable to cast for 15 seconds. Overall, the fight seems interesting and fun, especially on higher difficulties, but sadly, as you can see here, it was a good bit undertuned. I'm very interested to see how these final dungeons encounters look in a tyrannical setting, as each of them all have a pretty unique and interesting set of abilities present. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope this guide was helpful to you and provided a good bit of insight into the Temple of Sethraliss. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments below and what dungeon you'd like to see for a guide for next. If you want to see more BFA and Warcraft content, hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons below, as your support really helps. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you in Battle for Azeroth. Peace.